The lights of the studio gleamed harshly against polished tables and microphones, but nothing could pierce the tension like the words that cut through the air. Ann Coulter, eyes flashing with calculated defiance, leaned forward and unleashed a verbal salvo, her voice sharp, relentless, a storm aiming straight at Jasmine Crockett. The words were designed to wound, to humiliate, to assert dominance, and for a moment the studio froze under their weight. Cameras pivoted, capturing every flicker of reaction, every raised eyebrow, every gasp from the crowd that had come expecting civility. And just as Coulter's words sliced through the air, Jasmine Crockett's eyes told a story no one expected. It was a calm, unwavering stare, a quiet assertion of presence that seemed to stop time. Where others might flinch, where arrogance often forces submission, Crockett's gaze held steady, unyielding. The crowd's murmurs swelled into a hum of anticipation, a collective heartbeat synchronized to the unfolding drama. Viewers at home would feel it instantly. Something extraordinary was about to happen. Coulter's tone sharpened, each sentence dripping with smug certainty, the kind that assumes victory before the first word lands. Yet Crockett didn't flinch, didn't rise to bait. She simply leaned in, a subtle but powerful reminder that true strength isn't loud. It's measured, deliberate, and rooted in confidence. The studio felt it. The imbalance of power had shifted without a single raised voice from the one under attack. Every eye in the room followed her, waiting, sensing that the next moment would define everything. Whispers rose, cameras captured the tension like electric currents through the air. Analysts, commentators, even the audience, collectively held their breath. This wasn't just a debate. This was a clash of ideologies, a collision of arrogance and integrity, a moment that would ripple far beyond the studio's walls. And in that heartbeat, Crockett's poised silence became louder than any words Coulter could hurl. The air tightened, charged with anticipation. Everyone knew that what would come next was not mere rhetoric, it was history in motion. And then, with the calm precision of a seasoned leader who had faced countless trials before, Crockett opened her mouth. What she said next would leave the entire studio in stunned silence. This wasn't just another televised debate. The cameras, the lights, the millions watching at home, all of it underscored a moment that carried weight far beyond the studio walls. Ann Coulter's attack wasn't random. It was a calculated strike, meant to challenge not only Jasmine Crockett as a politician, but the very ideals she represents. Every word, every smirk, every deliberate interruption was a test of courage, a provocation aimed at unraveling composure in front of a nation hungry for confrontation. But beneath the surface, this clash symbolized something far bigger, a battle over identity, justice, dignity, and the right to be heard without fear or diminishment. Crockett's presence in the debate carried the echoes of countless communities who have historically been silenced or marginalized. Her voice wasn't just her own. It was the voice of people who see themselves in her, who understand that representation isn't a luxury, but a necessity. For viewers from immigrant families, for progressives demanding accountability and fairness, and for those who have ever been dismissed because of background, skin color, or conviction, this moment was intensely personal. The stakes were political, yes, but also profoundly human. Each exchange in that studio would ripple outward, challenging assumptions, shifting narratives, and setting a precedent for how civility, intellect, and courage confront arrogance. Ann Coulter's attack carried the weight of history. She is a figure known for provocation, for mastery of rhetoric that can cut through the air and dominate discourse. Her intention was clear: to unsettle, to provoke, to force Crockett into a defensive posture. But Crockett's calm, measured presence was already signaling something unexpected. The tension was no longer just about who could win a debate. It was about demonstrating that integrity and dignity could hold the power in any arena, that the force of reason and authenticity could outshine the theatrics of insult. For viewers, the suspense was palpable. Every word from Coulter threatened to escalate, to tip the scales toward spectacle over substance. But there was a silent promise in Crockett's eyes. What comes next will not be reactionary. It will be deliberate, precise, and devastating in its effectiveness. It was a promise that demanded attention, that forced the audience to lean in closer, to anticipate the moment when arrogance would meet unshakable composure. In framing the stakes, this debate became a microcosm of the larger struggles playing out across America. Questions of representation, equity, and moral courage were all on the table. How do we measure true leadership? Who gets to define public discourse? Who stands firm when provocation is intended to fracture resolve? Every viewer knew that this was more than words. It was a demonstration of values in motion, a testament to the power of calm strength over bluster and intimidation. And as the camera lingered on Crockett's composed expression, the subtle but undeniable FOMO began to take hold. Everyone watching felt it. Something monumental was about to unfold. Coulter had thrown down the gauntlet, but Crockett was about to respond in a way that would redefine the conversation, not just for the studio, but for the country. The stage was set, the stakes were clear, and the world waited, knowing that the next words would leave an unforgettable mark. Ann Coulter entered the studio, not just as a commentator, but as a figure whose very presence carried weight, notoriety, and expectation. Over decades, she had built a reputation for unflinching provocation, a willingness to speak with a sharpness that borders on weaponized rhetoric. To some, she is a master of words. To others, a storm of arrogance with little regard for the human cost of her attacks. Her history is punctuated by moments designed to shock, to dominate public discourse, and to assert authority through intimidation and bravado. Each book, each column, each televised appearance reinforced the image of a woman who thrives on conflict, who wields controversy like a sword, and who leaves audiences debating both her ideas and her audacity. Coulter's career is a roadmap of confrontation. She has made headlines by targeting political figures, activists, and even everyday citizens, often with a mixture of biting sarcasm and unwavering certainty. Her style is unmistakable, a verbal gauntlet thrown at anyone she perceives as vulnerable, anyone whose convictions or identity might make them an easy target for ridicule. For many, this approach is captivating, compelling viewers to tune in to witness the spectacle of verbal domination. For others, it embodies a darker side of public discourse, the casual weaponization of words, the deliberate provocation of fear, shame, or humiliation. In every arena she enters, Coulter carries the aura of the untouchable antagonist, someone who assumes victory before the conversation even begins. Yet, her provocations are not merely random acts of aggression. They are calculated, strategic, and deeply entwined with her public persona. She has built a brand around controversy, ensuring that her voice is always loud, always present, and always a headline away from another cultural clash. The political sphere has witnessed her skill in reframing narratives, turning discussions into spectacles where her rhetoric dominates. Every insult, every challenge, every interruption is a brushstroke painting her as the villain of the moment, a figure whose confidence teeters between brilliance and hubris. Despite this, Coulter's history is also a roadmap to vulnerability. Her reliance on spectacle, on verbal bravado, is inseparable from the perception of dominance. It is a style that works when opponents falter, when audiences are swept up in drama. But it leaves little room for ethical restraint, empathy, or patience. It is this very reliance that sets the stage for her downfall when confronted by someone operating from a place of integrity, intelligence, and calm. Against such an opponent, the theatrics that usually command attention can become liabilities. Contrast becomes critical when we examine the dynamic with Jasmine Crockett. While Coulter embodies arrogance and provocation, Crockett represents measured authority, rooted in principle and personal experience. The ethical high ground that Crockett occupies, a combination of empathy, knowledge, and composure, stands in stark opposition to Coulter's aggressive spectacle. This is not just a battle of words. It is a collision between two fundamentally different approaches to influence, one rooted in intimidation, the other in respect, reason, and dignity. Coulter's past controversies further underscore her role as antagonist. From incendiary statements on immigration and identity to relentless attacks on political adversaries, she has cultivated a persona designed to provoke, unsettle, and dominate. Yet each of these past confrontations carries the seeds of vulnerability. Those who respond with poise and conviction often emerge stronger in the public eye. The audience remembers not only the attack, but also the response. And in the case of Crockett, that response is poised to be unforgettable. Her reputation as a master provocateur precedes her, but it also creates expectations. The audience arrives anticipating sparks, expecting conflict, and ready to witness her verbal fireworks. Yet Coulter's reliance on shock tactics masks a fundamental truth. Words alone do not guarantee control when faced with someone who refuses to be rattled. Her arrogance, while commanding attention, leaves her unprepared for the type of composure and strategic brilliance Crockett is about to display. In framing Coulter as the villain, the stage is set not merely for confrontation, but for a study in contrast: arrogance versus integrity, spectacle versus substance, provocation versus calm authority. Every interruption, every cutting remark she delivers, carries echoes of past victories and past controversies, but now, those same tactics are about to meet their greatest challenge. For the viewers, the tension is palpable. For Coulter, the storm she often commands is about to shift direction. The ethical and emotional weight of Crockett's impending response threatens to eclipse even her most notorious moments, proving that brilliance without humility is no match for courage guided by principle. And as the studio holds its collective breath, the contrast between villain and hero is unmistakable. Coulter's legacy of provocation facing the poised inevitability of Crockett's calm, deliberate power. Jasmine Crockett's journey to the national spotlight was never a straight line, nor was it one paved with privilege or ease. From the earliest days of her life, she was acutely aware of the weight of identity, of the challenges faced by those whose voices were too often ignored. Growing up in communities shaped by resilience and struggle, she watched as families worked tirelessly to provide opportunity, dignity, and a better future. These early experiences instilled in her a profound sense of responsibility, not only to herself, but to the people and communities she would one day serve. Her path into public service was driven by conviction, not ambition. Crockett's commitment to justice and equality became evident early in her career, as she immersed herself in causes that championed the rights of immigrants, underrepresented communities, and those disenfranchised by systemic barriers. Each case she took on, each policy she supported, was a reflection of her deeply held belief that leadership is defined by service, empathy, and courage under pressure. She became known not only for her sharp intellect, but for the dignity with which she carried herself, commanding respect without the need for theatrics or self-aggrandizement. Crockett's professional accomplishments are impressive, but it is her personal story that truly builds empathy. She faced obstacles that would have deterred many, navigating a world where her ideas, her voice, and even her presence were often questioned or dismissed. Yet instead of succumbing to frustration or resentment, she channeled adversity into determination. Each challenge honed her patience, sharpened her insight, and reinforced a resilience that would become her most potent tool in any confrontation. Her integrity became a shield, her knowledge a sword, and her calm composure a force capable of turning even the most hostile encounters into opportunities for clarity and influence. Immigrant advocacy forms a cornerstone of her identity. Crockett understands that the fight for dignity, equality, and representation is not theoretical. It is lived daily by millions, striving for recognition and justice. This understanding informs every argument she makes, every public stance she takes, and every debate she enters. The stakes for her are never abstract. They are deeply human. By speaking for those who cannot always speak for themselves, she transforms the act of public service into a moral imperative, and this moral compass guides her even in moments of intense scrutiny and provocation. Her rise in politics is marked by a pattern of measured courage. Crockett never seeks confrontation for its own sake. Instead, she approaches each challenge strategically, with the foresight of someone who understands both the power of words and the weight of responsibility. Where others might resort to spectacle, she relies on preparation, insight, and the ability to read both the audience and her opponent. This methodical approach has earned her both respect and attention, and it sets the stage for a confrontation that will demand every ounce of her skill and composure. Intellect and emotional intelligence intersect in Crockett's public persona. She combines an exceptional grasp of law, policy, and rhetoric with the kind of empathetic understanding that allows her to navigate hostile environments without losing clarity or control. In debates, she is neither reactive nor performative. She is deliberate, always assessing the trajectory of a conversation and anticipating the angles from which opponents might strike. Her calm exterior belies a mind that is constantly calculating, preparing and refining responses that are precise, impactful, and unassailable. Crockett's integrity also plays a critical role. She has cultivated a reputation for consistency, fairness, and moral clarity. Audiences, colleagues, and constituents alike recognize her commitment to principles over popularity, truth over theatrics. This foundation of trust allows her to engage with aggression or provocation in a way that transforms potential vulnerability into a platform for demonstrating resilience and reason. In a world where bluster often overshadows substance, Crockett's ethical clarity becomes an unshakable advantage. The narrative of her personal and professional life teases the audience with the inevitability of her readiness. All of her struggles, social, political, and personal, have been training for moments exactly like the one about to unfold. Every setback she has faced, every challenge she has overcome, has sharpened her ability to maintain composure under pressure, to respond with authority, and to transform attacks into demonstrations of moral and intellectual strength. The confrontation with Ann Coulter, while intense and potentially explosive, is one Crockett is uniquely prepared to navigate. Audiences begin to see the stakes not only in terms of the debate, but in the larger symbolism it represents. A clash between arrogance and integrity, spectacle and substance, provocation and calm authority. Crockett's journey makes her not just a participant in the moment, but a representation of what courage, resilience, and ethical leadership look like when confronted by hostility. She embodies the hopes and struggles of countless individuals who value dignity over fear, principle over intimidation, and truth over spectacle. As viewers watch her poised in the studio, every detail of her posture, every subtle glance, every composed breath carries the weight of her history. The story of Jasmine Crockett is more than a biography. It is a narrative of preparation, of resilience, and of the quiet power that only comes from lived experience. The stage is set, the opponent is ready, and the audience can sense that when Crockett speaks, it will not be mere words. It will be a masterclass in poise, intellect, and unstoppable moral clarity. And as the cameras linger, the anticipation builds. The question in everyone's mind is no longer whether she can respond. It is how she will do so. Every moment of her life, every struggle she has endured, has been leading to this confrontation, and the world is about to witness history in motion. The studio was electric, each camera angle capturing the intensity of a verbal clash that had already captured national attention. Ann Coulter leaned forward, her voice slicing through the room with sharpened precision, each word designed to dominate, intimidate, and unsettle. Her questions were no longer casual inquiries. They were strategic strikes, aimed at finding cracks in Jasmine Crockett's composure. The audience felt the tension in every pause, every raised eyebrow, every subtle tilt of her head. Even the crew, usually invisible behind the cameras, leaned forward, aware that they were witnessing a confrontation destined to be remembered. Coulter's tone escalated with every sentence. It was fast, clipped, and loaded with implication, an orchestra of provocation orchestrated to provoke defensiveness. She punctuated her statements with pointed hand gestures, the kind that demanded attention and signaled command. Each phrase was crafted to provoke outrage or hesitation, a verbal gauntlet thrown at Crockett's feet. But Crockett's response was not immediate, not reactive. Her calmness became a visual anchor amidst Coulter's storm. She inhaled deliberately, her gaze steady, her hands relaxed yet poised. There was no flinch, no defensive body language, only a quiet confidence that made the audience lean in, sensing that something remarkable was about to happen. The clash intensified as Coulter attempted to escalate the confrontation, shifting from subtle digs to sharper, more personal barbs. She referenced past controversies, questioned Crockett's decisions, and attempted to frame the debate as a theater where intimidation would dominate. But Crockett's eyes, steady and unwavering, communicated a different story, one of measured intelligence, preparation, and moral clarity. Every verbal thrust from Coulter seemed to bounce off an invisible shield of composure. Where others might have faltered under such pressure, Crockett's poise made the aggression appear increasingly performative, less formidable, and more predictable. Audience reactions punctuated the exchange like a living soundtrack. Gasps, murmurs, and the occasional cheer erupted in response to Coulter's escalating provocations. Yet when Crockett finally spoke, even in brief controlled sentences, the room held its collective breath. Her calmness was not passive. It was active, commanding attention, reshaping the energy of the studio and forcing viewers to recalibrate their expectations. Every pause she took was deliberate, every word weighted with intention, demonstrating that true authority does not require shouting. It requires clarity, timing, and presence. The contrast between the two figures could not have been more pronounced. Coulter's sharp, rapid-fire attacks created a storm of chaos, while Crockett's measured, deliberate responses functioned like a lighthouse, cutting through the noise with precision and inevitability. This polarity amplified the drama, drawing viewers into the narrative as though they were witnessing a high-stakes duel, one where intellect and integrity squared off against spectacle and arrogance. Visual tension cues were everywhere. Cameras lingered on subtle shifts, Coulter's eyebrows knitting together, a slight lean forward signaling intensity. Crockett's composed posture, a hand resting lightly on the desk, signaling readiness. The lighting caught beads of sweat on the villain's forehead as the verbal pressure mounted, while Crockett's serene expression seemed almost luminous against the backdrop of rising chaos. Each frame reinforced the narrative of hero versus antagonist, of dignity standing firm against provocation. And yet, despite the escalating hostility, Crockett never lost control of the narrative. She reframed questions with precision, highlighted facts with clarity, and met every jab with subtle rhetorical finesse. The audience could feel the tension twist and turn with each exchange, knowing that the calm before the storm was building toward something unforgettable. As the debate surged forward, Coulter's attempts to destabilize Crockett grew increasingly transparent. Her words carried aggression, but were devoid of the substance needed to genuinely unsettle the hero standing before her. And in that transparency, the audience sensed the turning tide. The escalation had reached its peak. The drama was at its height. All that remained was the moment where Crockett's response would not merely answer Coulter, it would redefine the conversation entirely, leaving the studio and viewers alike suspended on the precipice of revelation. The stage was set. The verbal storm had intensified to a fever pitch, tension crackling through the room like electricity. The audience knew that the moment of reckoning was imminent, and the world outside the studio, following live updates and trending clips, held its collective breath. The escalation had served its purpose, building suspense, magnifying stakes, and ensuring that what was about to come would not just be heard, it would be felt, remembered, and shared. The studio seemed to hold its breath. Every eye was fixed on Jasmine Crockett, whose poised expression masked the intensity of the moment. Ann Coulter had launched attack after attack, each designed to unnerve, intimidate, and provoke. But Crockett's calm was not passive. It was the quiet prelude to a storm of intellect and moral clarity about to sweep through the room. The pause before she spoke was electric. Cameras lingered, audience members leaned forward, and even the air seemed to tighten in anticipation. Crockett began softly, almost deceptively understated, letting the silence stretch just long enough to draw in every listener. Then, with the precision of a seasoned rhetorician, she spoke, not in haste, not in anger, but with deliberate authority. Each sentence was carefully chosen, each word a scalpel carving clarity from the chaos Coulter had tried to impose. She addressed the points, yes, but more importantly, she reframed the narrative, shifting the debate from provocation to principle. Where Coulter had relied on spectacle and aggression, Crockett relied on fact, integrity, and the undeniable weight of lived experience. The crowd reacted immediately. Gasps, quiet murmurs, and scattered applause punctuated her words. But what truly resonated was the stillness that followed each point she made. It was the kind of silence that comes when an entire room recognizes brilliance, fairness, and courage in real time. Every camera angle captured Coulter's reaction, a tightening of the jaw, a narrowing of the eyes, the subtle flinch that comes when confidence meets unexpected, unshakable poise. The contrast could not have been starker. The villain's theatrics collided with the hero's calm, and the imbalance was unmistakable. Crockett's voice grew stronger with each carefully constructed argument, never rising into hostility, yet cutting with precision. She layered her points with historical context, social insight, and a moral clarity that highlighted the stakes far beyond the studio walls. Every phrase reinforced her commitment to justice, equality, and dignity, transforming what had begun as a simple debate into a lesson in leadership under pressure. The audience felt it, sensing that this was not just a momentary victory, but a demonstration of what integrity looks like when tested by provocation. She punctuated her response with strategic pauses, letting the weight of her words settle, allowing the tension in the room to rise and fall rhythmically. Coulter, for all her bravado, began to stumble in tone and pacing. Her attempts to interrupt were met with poised acknowledgement, her interruptions absorbed and reframed, leaving her words echoing against the immovable calm Crockett exuded. The visual tension was palpable. Coulter's hands fidgeted, her body leaned forward as if to reclaim authority, yet every gesture was met with Crockett's serene composure. It was a chess match in real time, and Crockett was several moves ahead. The counterattack deepened as Crockett introduced undeniable facts and historical parallels that made Coulter's provocations appear small, reactive, and ultimately hollow. Each revelation, each pointed insight, landed with impact, and the audience responded in waves. A gasp here, a quiet cheer there, a camera panning to the collective intake of breath. It was theater, yes, but it was grounded in truth, intellect, and ethical strength. Social media notifications began lighting up even within the studio. The ripple effect of her calm yet devastating performance was already underway. Crockett's rhetorical mastery became increasingly evident as she turned Coulter's own attacks into a framework for moral clarity. Each jab, each attempt at humiliation, was met with acknowledgement and redirection, transforming negativity into an opportunity to educate, inspire, and elevate. It was not about shaming the opponent, but about demonstrating unmistakably that courage and integrity are far more powerful than bluster or theatrics. The audience understood it immediately. The cameras captured it, and even Coulter could no longer mask the crack in her veneer. The hero's triumph was not merely verbal, it was psychological, moral, and visual. Every sentence Crockett delivered reinforced the idea that knowledge and composure carry more weight than volume or intimidation. The rhythm of the debate shifted entirely. Where Coulter had attempted to dominate, Crockett's presence demanded respect, attention, and ultimately deference. Her calm dismantled the illusion of control Coulter had relied upon, leaving the antagonist visibly destabilized for the first time. Crockett's delivery was cinematic in every sense. She timed her words to maximize suspense, letting pauses linger long enough for the audience to internalize each point before moving seamlessly into the next. Strategic shifts in tone emphasized key moments, and her body language reinforced her message, upright, confident, and unshakable. The contrast between the hero's poise and the antagonist's unraveling became a visual narrative in itself, telling a story of dignity, triumphing over arrogance without a single word wasted. At the climactic peak of her counterattack, Crockett unleashed a series of statements that were both factual and profoundly moral, exposing the emptiness behind Coulter's provocations while affirming the values of justice, equity, and representation. The impact was immediate. The studio, already on edge, erupted into a combination of stunned silence and appreciative murmurs. Social media feeds would later explode with clips of this very sequence, sharing hashtags, commentary, and admiration at the composure and intellectual rigor Crockett displayed. Coulter's confidence visibly crumbled. Subtle tells, tightened jaw, narrowed eyes, a hand brushing against her temple, revealed the effect Crockett's words had on her. Attempts to regain momentum faltered, pauses extended awkwardly, and the theatrical aggression that had characterized the earlier exchanges dissipated under the weight of calm authority. Crockett had transformed the debate from an arena of conflict to a stage of undeniable moral and intellectual clarity. Every angle of this moment reinforced the cinematic drama. Cameras captured close-ups of Crockett's unwavering gaze, wide shots of a hushed audience leaning forward, and reaction shots of Coulter, struggling to maintain composure. The ebb and flow of tension, the contrast between hero and antagonist, and the deliberate pacing of Crockett's delivery made this sequence unforgettable, creating a narrative that would be replayed and shared across platforms, celebrated not for spectacle but for substance. By the time Crockett concluded, The room was fully captivated. Her closing remarks were measured, dignified, and commanding. The crowd responded with a mixture of awe, applause, and the kind of silence that signifies collective recognition of genius in real time. Coulter, now visibly shaken, attempted a final interjection, but it lacked the conviction and force of earlier moments. The shift was complete. The antagonist had been disarmed, not by volume or aggression, but by the quiet power of intellect, preparation, and moral courage. In the aftermath of this counterattack, the narrative was clear. Crockett had not only defended herself, she had redefined the debate entirely. She demonstrated that authority is not claimed through intimidation, but earned through knowledge, empathy, and unwavering composure. The audience's emotional investment had been rewarded, and viewers everywhere would soon recognize the brilliance of her performance. The hero had emerged triumphant, leaving the antagonist exposed, the room electrified, and history subtly rewritten in that studio moment. As the cameras pulled back for wide shots, the resonance of Crockett's words lingered in the air. Social media chatter, audience whispers, and the palpable energy of the studio all pointed to the same conclusion. This was more than a debate. It was a masterclass in courage, intellect, and the quiet power of moral authority. Coulter's attacks, once threatening, now seemed small, reactive, and inconsequential in the face of Crockett's devastating, yet composed response. The mic drop moment had arrived. Not with dramatics or loud theatrics, but with precision, poise, and unassailable logic. Jasmine Crockett had turned provocation into triumph, hostility into clarity, and tension into inspiration. The world was watching, captivated, and the stage had been set for the aftermath that would ripple far beyond the studio walls. The moment Crockett's words landed, the studio's energy shifted. What had been a room buzzing with tension now settled into a stunned hush, the kind of silence that carries the weight of collective realization. But outside those walls, the storm was just beginning. Within seconds, clips of the confrontation flooded social media. Twitter feeds exploded with hashtags like #Crockett clapback, Joust debate victory, and mic drop moment, while TikTok and Instagram reels churned with reactions, slow-motion replays and snippets highlighting her calm, calculated dismantling of Coulter's attacks. Every share, every comment, every retweet carried the unmistakable thrill of witnessing history unfold in real time. Influencers and everyday viewers alike reacted in droves. Memes began circulating that juxtaposed Crockett's composed expression against Coulter's visible frustration. Each meme captured not only the drama, but also the emotional resonance, the triumph of dignity over arrogance, intellect over provocation. Clips were remixed, subtitled, and shared across platforms, accumulating millions of views within hours. Every notification ping seemed to echo the same truth. The hero had captured the cultural imagination, and the ripple effect was unstoppable. Commentators on major networks scrambled to analyze the exchange. Political analysts dissected Crockett's strategy, noting her exceptional ability to maintain composure while systematically undermining her opponent's theatrics. Columnists called it a masterclass in debate tactics, praising how she converted a hostile confrontation into a demonstration of poise, intellect, and moral clarity. Even conservative commentators, grudgingly or not, acknowledged the impact. Her words had forced a recalibration of how debates, confrontation, and public discourse are perceived in the modern era. Celebrities and public figures weighed in, amplifying the moment. Tweets and posts appeared praising Crockett's courage, intellect, and leadership under pressure. Athletes, actors, and fellow politicians shared clips, highlighting how rare it is to witness someone handle public attacks with such unwavering calm. The cultural conversation shifted almost instantly. The clip was no longer just a viral moment. It was a reference point for civility, strategy, and ethical strength in public discourse. News outlets and digital platforms ran follow-up stories, analyzing every line and reaction from the debate. Headlines emphasized the unforgettable clapback and the historic response that redefined confrontation in political media. Journalists highlighted how Crockett's ability to stay grounded under scrutiny created an inspiring narrative for audiences seeking representation, integrity, and moral courage. Opinion pieces underscored the symbolic significance of the exchange, framing it as a watershed moment for principled debate in an era dominated by spectacle and aggression. The ripple effect extended beyond politics. Online communities shared the clip as an example of standing firm in the face of intimidation. Motivational content emerged, emphasizing resilience, strategy, and the power of calm under pressure. Viewers from diverse backgrounds identified with Crockett's triumph, interpreting her response as validation of perseverance, intellect, and self-respect. Cultural commentators noted that the conversation now included broader societal themes: justice, identity, dignity, and the impact of representation in public life. Even educational platforms and discussion forums highlighted the debate. Political science enthusiasts broke down her tactics, while leadership and communication coaches cited her response as a case study in handling high-pressure confrontations. The moment became a reference point, demonstrating how preparation, clarity, and ethical conviction can turn a hostile environment into an opportunity for empowerment. The viral spread of the clip reinforced the notion that Crockett's victory was not confined to the studio. It was everywhere. In homes, offices, and online communities, each share, discussion, and article added layers to her influence, solidifying her role as a figure of inspiration and intellectual authority. Coulter's earlier attacks, intended to dominate the narrative, now paled in comparison to the cultural imprint Crockett had left. By the end of the day, the conversation had evolved into a nationwide discussion. Hashtags trended, memes circulated, and every mention reinforced the lesson. Poise, intellect, and integrity hold more power than aggression and theatrics. The aftermath was more than applause. It was a cultural event, a viral phenomenon, and a testament to how a single composed response can create waves of influence that extend far beyond the initial confrontation. Audiences felt it, commentators recognized it, and social media amplified it. The hero's triumph had entered the collective consciousness, not just as a debate victory, but as a defining cultural moment, one that would be remembered, shared, and cited for months, even years, to come. Crockett had not only survived the attack, she had reshaped the narrative entirely, leaving a lasting imprint on politics, culture, and public discourse. As the studio lights dimmed and the cameras stopped rolling, the weight of the moment began to settle. What had seemed like a simple exchange of words had become something far larger, a living lesson in courage, composure, and the enduring power of integrity. Jasmine Crockett's calm, measured response had not only silenced her adversary, it had reframed the very nature of confrontation. Where Coulter's attack sought to provoke fear, confusion, or defensiveness, Crockett demonstrated a far more potent weapon: dignity. In that quiet, powerful pause after her words, audiences everywhere recognized the universal truth she embodied. Arrogance can only intimidate if you allow it. Truth and ethical clarity carry a force that reverberates far beyond the moment. Crockett's response illuminated a deeper narrative about what it means to lead with principle. Every syllable, every deliberate pause, signaled that influence is earned through steadfastness, not theatrics. She modeled the idea that in the face of provocation, one's reaction can define not just the immediate outcome, but the moral and cultural landscape of the entire conversation. It was a reminder that courage is not only about speaking out, it is about standing firm in the values that guide your actions. Even when pressure mounts and cameras capture every falter, this moment resonated across a country increasingly hungry for authentic leadership. Viewers saw themselves reflected in Crockett's composure, immigrants striving to assert their voices, young activists balancing passion with strategy, citizens yearning for a model of leadership rooted in intellect and empathy rather than spectacle. Her victory was not simply a personal triumph, it was emblematic of a broader struggle for representation, dignity, and the right to claim one's place in public discourse without fear or apology. Each retelling of the event reinforced the message: integrity and calm are not weaknesses. They are instruments of lasting influence. Crockett's example also highlighted the transformative potential of self-restraint. In a world where shouting often masquerades as strength, she showed that patience, precision, and deliberate clarity create impact that far outlasts any momentary outburst. The studio audience's silence had been mirrored online. Every viral clip, every shared reaction, carried the imprint of someone who chose reflection over reaction, strategy over chaos. The crescendo of admiration was not just for the words she spoke, but for the principles she represented. Her poise had become a teaching moment, inspiring viewers to consider how they confront injustice, intimidation, or slander in their own lives. At its core, the lesson transcended politics. Crockett's triumph demonstrated that leadership is measured not by the volume of one's voice, but by the resonance of one's actions. Her calm under fire reinforced the timeless value of service over self-interest, empathy over aggression, and courage in the pursuit of truth. By choosing to rise above the provocation, she reminded audiences that true power lies in lifting others, defending the marginalized, and embodying ideals that outlast fleeting controversy. Reflecting on the encounter, one could see the broader significance. Crockett's response had become a cultural touchstone. It was a narrative of dignity prevailing against arrogance, of intellect meeting spectacle with precision, and of identity and service being wielded as tools of empowerment. The lesson echoed through classrooms, boardrooms, and digital spaces alike, inspiring a generation to act with deliberation, integrity, and courage. As the story settled into public consciousness, it became clear that the impact of Crockett's response would extend far beyond a single televised debate. It was a call to action and a mirror for those watching. To meet hostility with strength, to confront injustice with clarity, and to recognize that moral courage, when paired with strategic intelligence, reshapes not only immediate outcomes, but the very values by which society measures success. In the final analysis, the message was unmistakable. Arrogance may shout, but truth endures. Provocation may provoke, but dignity inspires. Crockett's moment was not just a victory in debate. It was a declaration that integrity, calm and courage remain the most powerful forces in public life, and that every act rooted in service, identity, and principle has the capacity to leave a lasting imprint on the world. As the final moments of the debate replay in our minds, one thing is clear. Jasmine Crockett's composed response to Ann Coulter did more than make headlines. It made history. What began as an attempt to intimidate and provoke transformed into a masterclass in courage, dignity, and principled leadership. Her unwavering poise reminds us all that standing up for truth, even in the face of aggression, is not just possible, it is necessary. This is the essence captured in the title itself. Ann Coulter attacks Jasmine Crockett, but her response makes history. Every word of that exchange underscores a simple yet powerful truth. Integrity cannot be silenced. Arrogance cannot prevail when met with clarity. And courage is contagious. Now it's your turn to be part of this movement. Share this video to amplify the message of resilience, strength, and ethical courage. Discuss it with friends, family, and colleagues. Let the conversation spark reflection on how we confront provocation in our own lives. Subscribe to the channel to stay connected with stories that celebrate leaders who inspire, challenge the status quo, and uphold dignity above all else. Your engagement is more than clicks. It's a commitment to a culture that values truth, service, and empowerment. Every share, comment, and subscription helps spread the lesson Crockett demonstrated, that calm intelligence and moral courage can transform moments of confrontation into defining cultural victories. Stand with those who act with principle. Celebrate voices that refuse to be drowned out by spectacle. Be part of a community that chooses reflection over reaction, integrity over intimidation, and courage over complacency. Together, we ensure that moments like this, where truth meets provocation, are not forgotten but remembered, shared, and built upon for a more just and inspired future.